If the world kicks you in the head, that's one thing. But when you don't do what you're supposed to do, I have no sympathy or empathy for you at all.
Demond Wilson shocked the world by walking away from millions in Hollywood fame. And what he revealed before his death changes everything. The beloved Lamont from Sanford and Son didn't just leave TV at the height of his career. He gave up stardom for a life of faith, service, and sacrifice. Why would a star trade fame for a calling few could dare? What truth did he live by for decades that the world never saw? Join us as we uncover the details of Demond Wilson's final words, the vow that changed it all. Wilson's decision to leave it all behind was triggered by a traumatic childhood experience that left a huge impact on his life. Growing up in Harlem, Wilson was exposed to the entertainment world and witnessed the challenges that Black families faced in mid-20th century America. However, that didn't stop him from shining as a kid. Right from his childhood, Wilson showed early promise in performance, studying tap dance and ballet, appearing on Broadway at age 4 with William Marshall and Ossie Davis in a revival of the Pulitzer Prize-winning play The Green Pastures, and performing at Harlem's legendary Apollo Theater at age 12. For a Black child in 1950s, Harlem to appear on Broadway and dance at the Apollo demonstrated extraordinary talent and determination. But then came the moment that would define the rest of Demond Wilson's life. A ruptured appendix nearly ended Wilson's life at age 12, a moment he later called transformative. From that day forward, faith guided him. In that moment of facing death, young Wilson made a vow to God that if he lived, he would dedicate his life to preaching the gospel. This wasn't a casual promise made in panic and forgotten when danger passed. It was a covenant that shaped every decision Wilson would make for the next 67 years. After the health scare, Wilson sought to find a way to devote his life to God. He was raised Roman Catholic, but was shaped by Pentecostal worship with his grandmother, experiencing two different expressions of Christian faith that would later inform his ministry approach. The vow, made at age 12, didn't prevent Wilson from pursuing entertainment. It just meant he always understood entertainment was temporary, a platform rather than a destination. He studied acting at the American Community Theater and at Hunter College, developing the craft that would eventually make him famous. But even as he trained for theatrical success, the memory of that hospital bed and the promise he'd made to God remained. Wilson was drafted and then wounded in Vietnam while serving in the 4th Infantry Division of the U.S. Army. When he eventually returned from combat, he came back with both physical wounds and the psychological weight of war. But he also returned with his faith intact, his vow to God unbroken, and his determination to build a career in entertainment strengthened rather than weakened by what he'd experienced. The discipline of military service, the perspective gained from combat, and the gratitude of survival all prepared Wilson for what came next. But would Hollywood allow a wounded Vietnam veteran with deep faith convictions to break through in an industry known for superficiality and excess? The role that made and marred him. The year 1971 was a big one for Wilson. He appeared in the Sidney Poitier as Virgil Tibbs' film The Organization and on an episode of Mission Impossible. But his breakthrough came from an unlikely source, a guest appearance on All in the Family. Due to the strength of his performance on the 1971 All in the Family episode, Edith Writes a Song, he was hired as Lamont Sanford, the son of aging widower Fred G. Sanford, proprietor of Sanford and Son Salvage at 9114 South Central Avenue. Producers Norman Lear and Bud Yorkin, fresh off All in the Family's success, were developing an American adaptation of the British sitcom Steptoe and Son about a cantankerous junk dealer and his put-upon son. Sanford and Son premiered on NBC in January 1972. and audiences immediately embraced the chemistry between Red Fox's explosive Fred Sanford and Wilson's exasperated Lamont. The series ran 6 seasons, consistently ranking among Nielsen's top 10 shows for its first 5 years and landing in the top 5 3 times. Lamont Wilson served as the show's emotional anchor, balancing Fox's explosive humor with quiet restraint. Lamont endured his father's schemes, sharp insults, and feigned heart attacks, along with Fred Sanford's most famous put-down, "You big dummy." While Red Fox got the flashy one-liners and physical comedy, Wilson played the straight man, the grounded, rational son trying to make something of himself while trapped in his father's junkyard, both literally and figuratively. In a 1972 feature with Ebony magazine, Sanford and Son, Red Fox, and Demon Wilson, Wake Up TV's jaded audience, the publication hailed Wilson as excellent. Reflecting on his breakthrough role, Wilson told Ebony at the time, "For me, it's like graduating from school." But success brought complications. Fox temporarily walked out in 1974 over a contract dispute, and the series ended in spring 1977, with Fred and Lamont still locked in their fiery dynamic. Wilson played Lamont through the run of the series and became the star when Red Fox walked off the show in 1974 over a salary dispute with the producers, and his character was written out for the rest of the season. Wilson's complicated relationship with Red Fox has been well documented. When asked in 2014 whether he kept in touch with anyone from Sanford and Son, especially Red Fox, who died on October 11, 1991, he responded, "No, I saw Red Fox once before he died, circa 1983, and I never saw him again." Wilson elaborated, "At the time I was playing tennis at the Malibu Racquet Club, and I was approached by some producers about doing a Red Fox 50th anniversary special. I hadn't spoken to him since 1977, and I called the club where Red was playing. And we met at Red's office, but he was less than affable. I told those guys it was a bad idea." The hurt ran deeper than professional disagreements. "I never had a crossword with him. I had no animosity toward Red for quitting the show in 1977 because I had $1 million contract at CBS to do Baby, I'm Back. My hurt was that he didn't come to me about throwing the towel in. I found out in the hallway at NBC from a newscaster. I forgave him, and I loved Red, but I never forgot that. The love was there." In 1980 to 1981, Red attempted to revive the show with the short-lived sitcom Sanford, but Wilson refused to reprise his role for the new series, a decision that disappointed fans but demonstrated Wilson's unwillingness to repeat what he'd already done for money alone. Demon Wilson recently said in an interview that he and Red Fox were packing handguns during the recording of the live shows. Why? He said that because they recorded live before a studio audience, they were not taking a chance of being out there without protection. He said that both he and Red were aware that there are crazies out here. This revelation, that Wilson and Red felt unsafe enough to carry weapons during tapings, speaks to the pressures and paranoia of fame that would eventually drive Wilson away from Hollywood entirely. But would leaving Sanford and Son behind lead to continued success, or prove that he'd already reached his career peak? The roles that never matched Lamont. After Sanford and Son ended in 1977, Wilson starred in the short-lived sitcoms Baby, I'm Back and The New Odd Couple, though neither matched the cultural staying power of his breakout role. Wilson later starred in CBS's Baby, I'm Back, but the show only lasted 13 episodes. The show premiered in 1978 and cast Wilson as Raymond Ellis, a man who had abandoned his family years earlier and now returns trying to reclaim his place. Despite CBS's confidence and Wilson's proven appeal, audiences didn't connect with the premise or characters the way they had with Sanford and Son. Wilson then starred opposite Ron Glass in The New Odd Couple, which only lasted 18 episodes. Wilson portrayed Oscar Madison on The New Odd Couple, playing the sloppy sports writer opposite Ron Glass's fastidious Felix Unger. The show attempted to recreate the magic of the original Jack Klugman-Tony Randall series with a black cast, but it never found its audience despite featuring two talented actors. The pattern became clear. Wilson was being typecast as the exasperated straight man, always reacting to someone else's craziness, always playing variations of Lamont Sanford with different names. Throughout the late 1970s and 80s, Wilson made several guest appearances on popular anthology series. He appeared as Bart on The Love Boat in 1979 and Jesse on The Love Boat in 1981. Other guest spots included Three's Company in 1980 and Bring 'Em Back Alive in 1983. Despite these opportunities, Wilson faced significant challenges due to typecasting as the exasperated son figure on Sanford and Son, leading to emotionally draining roles with repetitive dialogue that he described as unfulfilling and lacking depth. Wilson was increasingly frustrated with roles that failed to challenge him creatively or allow him to demonstrate his full range as an actor. He expressed alienation in Hollywood, viewing colleagues as mere work associates rather than friends, and the industry's trash content exacerbated his personal struggles, including a cocaine habit. In the 1980s, Wilson beat a cocaine problem and became ordained as an interdenominational minister. Wilson's struggle with cocaine mirrors the experience of countless entertainers who turn to drugs to cope with the pressure, emptiness, and spiritual bankruptcy of fame. But unlike many who destroy their lives or die from addiction, Wilson confronted his demons, got clean, and recognized that his cocaine use was a symptom of a deeper problem. He was living in direct contradiction to the vow he'd made to God at age 12. Though he returned to the screen at times, he told the Los Angeles Times in 1986 that the acting life was not for him. It wasn't challenging, and it was emotionally exhausting because I had to make it appear that I was excited about what I was doing. After The New Odd Couple ended in 1983, Wilson declined a subsequent TV series offer just 8 months later, marking his gradual withdrawal from acting to pursue other paths. This decision confused industry insiders. Actors don't usually turn down guaranteed work when they still have name recognition. But Wilson wasn't making decisions based on career trajectory anymore. He was finally ready to fulfill the promise he'd made to God 4 decades earlier. But how does a famous television actor transition to becoming a Christian minister without appearing hypocritical or opportunistic? The calling he couldn't ignore. In 1984, Demond Wilson was ordained as a minister in the Church of God in Christ denomination, marking his formal entry into full-time evangelistic ministry after years of acting. This ordination fulfilled a long-standing personal commitment, as Wilson had made a childhood vow to dedicate his life to preaching, a calling he traced back to his early years in Harlem, where he envisioned addressing large audiences with the gospel. Wilson was 38 years old when he was ordained, old enough to have achieved fame and success, young enough to build an entirely new career. Following his ordination, Wilson launched extensive evangelistic efforts across the United States during the 1980s and 1990s, conducting nationwide tours that took him to churches, auditoriums, and stadiums where he preached to crowds ranging from hundreds to tens of thousands. His messages centered on themes of faith, forgiveness, repentance, and the spiritual dangers of Hollywood's excesses, drawing from his own experiences in the entertainment industry to warn against the pitfalls of fame and moral compromise. Wilson didn't preach abstract theology, he preached from personal experience, sharing his struggles with cocaine, his disillusionment with Hollywood, and his journey from fame to fulfillment through faith. Wilson made numerous guest appearances on the Praise the Lord program, which aired on the Trinity Broadcasting Network, and was a good friend of Clifton Davis. These TBN appearances gave Wilson a platform to reach millions of Christians who might never attend his crusades, but who regularly watched religious television. He used his celebrity to point people toward Christ rather than toward himself. In 1994, he founded Restoration House of America, an organization that provides spiritual guidance and vocational training to former inmates, helping them rebuild their lives after incarceration. This wasn't a vanity project or a tax write-off. It was Wilson putting his faith into action by serving society's most marginalized and rejected population. The decision to focus on prisoners makes perfect sense when you understand Wilson's theology. He believed everyone deserves redemption, that everyone can be transformed by God's grace, and that society's throwaway people are the ones most in need of the gospel's message of hope and restoration. His sermons draw on personal experience, using his Hollywood years as teaching examples about pride, materialism, and finding purpose beyond success. Wilson also became an author, using writing to expand his ministry beyond those who heard him preach. The New Age Millennium, published in 1998, critiques modern spiritual movements from an evangelical Christian perspective. His 1998 book, The New Age Millennium, An Expose of Symbols, Slogans, and Hidden Agenda, is a critique from a Christian perspective of the New Age movement and Freemasonry, among other quasi-spiritual movements. In interviews, he's been clear about his priorities. Travel around, preach in the Lord's gospel, that's what. If he wants me to do a film or be a pastor, we'll have to wrestle a little bit, but I'll do whatever he wants me to do. This quote reveals Wilson's understanding of his life. God is in control. Wilson is obedient, and career decisions are made on the basis of calling rather than opportunity. In the summer of 2011, Wilson began appearing alongside actress Nina Nicole in a touring production of Matt Hardwick's play, The Measure of a Man. The play is described as a faith-based production and is set in a small town in South Georgia. Wilson's return to performance was selective, only faith-based projects that advanced his ministry rather than his acting career. Wilson began work in 2010 to produce and act in a melodramatic family film based on the play Faith Ties. Wilson said of the project, "I play a broken-down old drunk whose wife and daughter are killed, and he's given up on life. The protagonist is a pastor who is in the middle while he watches the lives of people crumbling around him." The irony is interesting. Wilson spent years in Hollywood playing roles that bored him, then walked away to preach, then returned to acting only to play roles that supported his ministry. He had completely inverted the typical Hollywood trajectory, where people use ministry to extend their fame. Wilson used fame to extend his ministry. But did his decision to prioritize faith over fame mean financial hardship? Or could ministry provide the same security that Hollywood had offered? The life he built. Wilson married model Cicely Johnston on May 3, 1974, right in the middle of Sanford and Son's run. They had 6 children, building a large family that required stability, commitment, and the kind of presence that constant touring or film work makes difficult. Cicely stood by Wilson through his Hollywood years, his cocaine addiction, his career transition to ministry, and his decades of evangelistic work. He's survived by his wife, Cicely Johnston, their 6 children and 2 grandchildren, creating a family legacy that extends beyond Demon's fame to include the next generation. Financially, Wilson's choices were unconventional but sustainable. According to Celebrity Net Worth, his net worth is estimated at $2.5 million as of 2025. Other sources estimate between $1.5 million and $2.5 million, reflecting the difficulty of assessing wealth for someone who stepped away from high-earning entertainment work decades ago. These numbers are modest compared to what Wilson could have earned if he'd continued pursuing every television opportunity. But they represent comfortable security for a man whose priorities were never about accumulating wealth. Wilson lived comfortably, provided for his family, and built financial stability through ministry, book sales, occasional acting work, and smart financial management. He continued appearing at classic television conventions where fans of Sanford and Son gather. These events provide income and allow him to connect with people for whom the show remains meaningful decades later. Wilson approached these conventions as ministry opportunities, chances to meet people who loved Lamont Sanford and introduce them to the faith that now defined Demon Wilson. He never won major television awards despite Sanford and Son's success and cultural impact. Emmy nominations during that era often overlooked sitcoms, particularly those featuring black casts in favor of prestige dramas. His real achievement is a legacy. Sanford and Son opened doors for black actors and paved the way for shows that followed. He and Red Fox proved that audiences of all backgrounds would watch and love a show centered on black family life. Wilson's final years were spent exactly as he'd wanted, preaching, writing, ministering to former inmates through Restoration House of America, enjoying his family, and occasionally acting in faith-based projects. He has since participated in occasional interviews and podcasts in the 2020s, discussing his Sanford and Son legacy, Hollywood experiences, and faith journey, such as conversations on platforms like Hype Plus TV in 2023 and 2024. On January 30th, 2026, surrounded by family in his Palm Springs home, Demon Wilson's remarkable journey came to an end. His publicist, Mark Goldman, who worked with Wilson for 15 years, said, "I had the privilege of working with Demon for 15 years, and his loss is profoundly felt. He was an unbelievable man, and his impact will never be forgotten." Do you think Wilson made the right choice, prioritizing faith over continued acting success? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.